Hi, my name is Morris Tan. I'm at the College of Law where I teach, and one of the things that I changed in my public international law syllabus in terms of the objectives that are there is that I wanted to instill a greater sense of justice. And to me, this phrase captures a lot of things that are there and succinctly expresses a whole range of things that are, in some senses, inherent when you're talking about a public international law class, but it also specifically gives this objective that I think is an overarching and very important one that I unpack and apply in various different ways. The change that I moved to the very beginning of the course, an example of the place where there is more systematic injustice going on than any other country in the world. And this goes to that objective that I referred to before, and I'd never done this in this class before. And it was really gripping to the students. They had a concrete sense of why public international law matters, and matters in contexts such as in North Korea. And so it turned out to be a very powerful, gripping way, based on the responses I've received from students, to start the whole semester and to start the whole course with respect to this particular case study. It is a totalitarian dictatorship that grossly and systematically and horrifically harms its own people in all sorts of different injustices, such as the vast concentration camps that they've had, where hundreds of thousands of people have died, and potentially around, estimates say, maybe a couple 100,000 presently are suffering, but the whole country is like one big jail. And so this is, I think, a very gripping example for students to see the worst system of injustice in the world today. Example is I talk about the Nuremberg trials, which were the first of its kind that tried the Nazi war criminals subsequent to World War II. I also have the students watch a movie in conjunction with that, and that helps to enliven and help to engage the students in various respects relating to this historic tribunal. I also have a part in that course where in the syllabus, where I say from the beginning that I want to instill a heart for human rights, that these are real people who are suffering real violations of their human rights, and I want them to care about it. And I say that I said that right on the first day of class. The example that I start off and lead off the class with is slavery. Slavery has often been along the lines of race, something that was talked about a good bit at MCTI. But I talk about how slavery had, bit by bit, historically, become illegal throughout the world. Yet, at the same time, still exists to this very day. And so I talk about slavery, I talk about human trafficking, and give them the simulations that I made reference to earlier allow the students to try their hand at solving the problems of this world, and there are various things relating to MCTI that make their way into these simulations. It's a great way for students to apply what they're learning and to bring theory and principles to bear upon practice. The reflection papers are intended to give me a sense of why students entered the class, what they intend to do after law school, what they are looking forward to learning in the class, and then there's a final reflection paper at the end of the class where I see whether or not any of that has has changed or has been amplified or developed in various respects. It's very interesting to see the initial reflection papers of students along these lines, and I'm looking forward to seeing the final reflection papers and what their thoughts are as well. The initial assignments, readings for the class and assignments for the class had actually impacted the initial reflection paper of a number of the students, which was quite interesting to see. I expect that the students will benefit from both the theoretical and practical aspects of the course, and that will impact how they practice law or what they do in a related area or whatever they end up doing after graduation. And I fully expect, and I've heard from various former students, that they've received some benefit along these lines. Hopefully they'll receive even more benefit from these courses, and I'm looking forward to seeing what students do. I've had various students do all sorts of different things to apply what they have taken away from these classes to their life beyond these classes. One of the things that I want to mention that I've reflected upon and learned in the course of MCTI was all that was talked about in terms of the privileges that people have that are not necessarily common for people to have. For children, the different things that they get or don't get from their parents, and how so many children don't get the sorts of things that I received from my parents or that I and my wife try to give to our children, really struck me in the course of the MCTI that there are many who do not have such privileges in life, and it is also impacted my thoughts along these lines with respect to the students that we have here. I'm actually the first from both sides of my family to go to law school, much less to become a law professor. And so that had never occurred from either side of my family. My dad actually comes from a poor family, and my family immigrated when I was young to this country, and there are a whole array of issues relating to that as well. But I realize, a lot of these students that are here, a sizable segment, I think, have underprivileged backgrounds. Not all, but many. Also are first generation law students. In other words, they've never had anyone from their families go to law school. I have a research assistant now who's never had anyone in her family even go to college, much less law school. And not to mention other privileges that are there and many times are not available to sizable segments of the population in general, but the population that makes up the student body here at the College of Law. I also serve as the International Law Concentration Advisor here at the law school, and international law and international issues are inherently multicultural, and so come up just as a matter of course in this terrain. Want to thank you for your attention to what I am sharing by videotape here. I want to thank the technical support people, Yvonne and Matt, who've made this videotaping possible, and also my research assistant, Amanda, who helped me to prepare various materials relating to this presentation. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you enjoyed the presentation.